You're listening to the Staging Sips podcast with Lori Fisher. This podcast is dedicated to helping real estate staging CEOs build healthy businesses that grow, flow, and thrive. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so happy to be with you, and I'm so happy to be with you with this episode today. This is a big one, and I haven't even recorded it yet, and I already feel like I have birthed an episode. It is going to be so valuable. So if you are multitasking while you are listening to this episode today, no problems, but do what you have to do to record, to send this to yourself, download it, whatever it is, to listen to this again when you can sit and take notes, because you're going to want to take notes. So that said, before we dive into the episode today, I want to say a big thank you to the business owners that headed over to the SIP survey between last week's episode and this week's episode to fill it out. Awesome. You're amazing. I so appreciate it. And if you haven't done it yet, it's still not too late. It's super helpful for me. We'll have the link in the show notes for you to go do that. But I thought it was really interesting to see the continuity between those that had filled out prior to last week's episode and those that have filled out since last week's episode, how much similarity there is between what you have dialed in and what you are struggling with. So again, all excellent information for me to bring forward in future episodes of the podcast, as well as anything that I am creating for the Staging Business School. So thank you. I so appreciate you taking the time to do that so that I can help you better. And I also want to thank the lovely person who left this really nice message when they filled out their survey, which was, I love all the things you talk about, systems and how to run your business. You break everything down so concisely. Your podcast has helped me tremendously. You talk about things in the staging industry that most people, quote unquote, keep secret and do not discuss. So I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate you telling me that, taking the time to write that. And I'm so glad, because my intention is to lift the veil on what it's like to grow a staging business. And I'm so glad that it comes across that way to you. So thank you. I will keep doing my work, and I appreciate you guys. Keep doing yours to help me make this content even more valuable to you. So I know I said in last week's episode that 100% of the respondents, and now that includes all of those of you who have filled out the survey since last week's episode, you did not have a keep in touch plan, which is great information for me to have. And I mentioned that our upcoming podcasts are going to dive into relationship marketing and the zip and click marketing protocol. But as I thought about that, I really started to think we probably need to even take another step backwards, because when we start our protocol, I want us to be prepared for the results of what happens. So many of you in business owners have talked about the fact that you don't have enough work and you don't have enough cash flow for the size businesses that you have. And certainly one of the things that we can control is our marketing protocol. But there are things that we cannot control. And those are like market condition issues, seasonalities, lawsuits like the NAR lawsuit, even things like greater economic influences like inflation and things like that. But we can control some things. We can control our marketing. We can control growth issues. And today we're going to actually dip into that. We can control the cost to deliver our services. So I want us to only focus when we're thinking about when we do not have enough work or enough cash flow for the size of our business. I want to focus on only what we can control. We cannot control all of those other things. So today, I want to focus on strategic growth and strategic non-growth and capacity. Because when you start your consistent marketing protocol, like I said, I want to make sure your business is prepared. I want you to know where you're going so you understand the result you're about to produce. And I don't want you growing with a broken process or a broken pricing model. And I don't want you growing with debt that is continuing to spiral out of control. Obviously, we need to invest in our businesses. That is a different thing, but I want you to invest strategically. And in order to strategically grow, we also really need to understand capacity. And this is something that I never really had a good grasp on in my business until I had team in place and I had more data in place. And that is probably a big challenge for a lot of you business owners. So I'm going to talk through capacity, and I'm going to use numbers from my business today. And I'm going to share with you how I have those numbers, and you can use those as a benchmark. So anyway, I'm going to break down both growth and capacity, and then we're going to go through some real world examples. And again, we're going to use some numbers from my business that you can use. Okay. So growth, simple growth. The definition of growth is really when you're increasing your number of clients, you're increasing your team, you're increasing your inventory, and you're increasing your overhead in terms of both payroll and other operating expenses, like, maybe you need to expand space for your inventory, things like that. Strategic growth is when you run your numbers and you make decisions based on your ability to leverage your processes, your team, and your money. And we're going to dive into that today. Strategic non-growth. Now, I want to, when we are defining strategic non-growth, I want to just say this to the growth business owner, that business owner who's probably in the $0 to $30,000 to $50,000 range of your business. And you are still a solopreneur. You may have, a very part-time assistant or something like that, but you don't really have full functioning team, and you're still very much hands-on in your business. Okay. So for the growth business owner, I want you to listen to this. But again, like if you're same thing with the multitaskers, I want you to dog ear this, download it, save it, text yourself, whatever, so that you can listen to it back again as you get closer to building team, because your job right now is to get noticed, get known, and get new clients as quickly as you can. So you're in full growth mode. So this strategic non-growth is really for those business owners in late growth business or the accelerate business owner or accelerate phase of business. Strategic non-growth is when you decide purposefully to not take on more appointments / clients in your business, because these are the times when you want to work on clarity in your processes and efficiency. So you may want to go through a non-growth period to kind of refine the way the business runs. You may be experiencing debt at this time and think the answer is more clients, but it may be more efficiency and a price right sizing, especially if you're offering vacant staging services and you haven't truly dived in or dove in or whatever it is into your numbers. And periods of non-growth typically happen after you've hired new team members. And I know this is totally counterintuitive, but when you hire is when you learn what isn't clear or efficient in your business, or you learn what you haven't documented, things like this. We just had a conversation with 2 business owners inside of the Accelerate program around strategic non-growth, because they actually lost a team member and they now need to hire somebody. And we talked about the fact that we want them in a strategic non-growth period so that their business isn't running beyond capacity, and then not delivering to the clients, which is happening right now. So we want to be able to deliver to our clients in a really great way. And that is difficult to do when we've hit capacity. So let's dive into what capacity is. So I looked at a lot of definitions of this, and the one from Investopedia seemed to make the most sense to me. And the simplest, capacity is the maximum level of output that a company can sustain to make a product or provide a service. Planning for capacity requires management to accept the limitations on the production process. I would actually add that we need to know what the limitations are in the production process before we are able to accept the limitations in the production process. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's dive into some numbers that will help you better understand both capacity and growth. And we're going to start with staging consultations or styling evaluations first, and then we're going to look at vacant staging and inventory and things like that. So before we dive into all of that, at Rethink Home Interiors, we track our time in a very detailed way. We use an app called Get Harvest. We're all obsessed with it. So if you don't have a good time tracking app, check out Get Harvest. It's a really good one. And inside of Harvest, when you create a project, you can break down each project with tasks. So for each service, we divide it into subtasks. So for a styling evaluation, we have admin as a task, we have styling eval as a task, and we have selling success plan as a task. So what we are able to do is see how much admin time is devoted to that, how long was the actual appointment, including any travel time or things like that. And then how long did it take to produce the styling evaluation, the selling success plan? And in general, so the nice thing about that is then we can run reports to see how much each one of those take. So we can see if, our team is pretty consistently taking X amount of time to produce a selling success plan. If there's any outliers to that, where there are projects where maybe some things took longer, we can really dive into the numbers. So let's look at your business and the questions you can be asking around this before you even have any of that data. So the first thing is, how many appointments can each stylist in your business complete per week? So in order to find out this information, what you're going to look at is a couple of things. So if you assume that each appointment is up to 2 hours, let's say that's a pretty standard. I find that works for most houses, is an up to 2 hour appointment. So assume that. Then assume that there's travel time and any post work. So in our case, like I mentioned, we have a selling success plan that goes out within 48 hours. You may not have that in your workflow. Maybe you do, simply you do a site review and it's all given verbally to the client and then they handle it. So you've got to kind of think about it that way, but I want you to assume how long each appointment type is. And then I want to give you some additional travel time and any post-work time. You also want to think about if there's any admin time to onboard that client. And if you are a business owner of one, you definitely need to, when you're thinking about capacity, think about the time that you will have working on your business, networking, coffee dates, returning calls, and emails when you're thinking about how many appointments per week a stylist can take on. As a guide, our team averages 4.5 hours total devoted to from front end to selling success plan going out the door. So some of them are a little bit longer, but in general, 4.5 hours seems to be our sweet spot. And that's kind of like our median number. So if you can use that as a benchmark even for yourself. So if we're looking at each one of our team members takes on one appointment and it's 4.5 hours, that's about 2 per day average, right? 2 per day. And you want to think about how many days per week you want to be offering appointments. And that can be based on, how much business you want to create and how much capacity your team has, right? So if we're looking at, say, doing 3 to 4, let's say 4 days per week of styling appointments. So 2 styling appointments per day, 4 days a week. That means there's 8 appointments a week. That's 36 hours a week. So if you're looking to hire a team member and that is your goal for your business, you're going to want somebody who has capacity to flex up to 36 hours per week, right? And so you're delivering at that rate. If you're consistently doing that, that's 32 styling evaluations per month. So that is fantastic. So the other thing that you want to think about then is your revenue coming out of that. So if you are paying a styling assistant, let's just take that 4.5 hours and round it up to 5 hours. Say you pay a styling assistant 5 hours per styling evaluation or consultation. We want to think about what you're setting that price at, because if you're paying your styling assistant $20 an hour, that's $100 per eval. If you're paying them $25, that's $125 an hour. $125 per eval. If they're a $30 hour employee, that's $150 per eval. Okay, so I want you to think about that. So if you're paying out already, say you're charging, I've seen people charge as little as $125 for a consult because it's them right now. Then if you're paying somebody the modest amount of $20 an hour, that is way eating into your profit margin, right? So this is where the growth business owner, you should be paying attention about pricing your services. So a rule of thumb is that whatever you pay your team member, you want to multiply it by 3 when you bill them out. And that gives you a gross profit margin of 66%. So this is really helpful. So if you're paying somebody $20 an hour, you're going to want to be charging at least $300 per consultation to give you a 66 gross profit margin, which leaves you money to pay for other things, other expenses inside the business. That's not your net profit margin. That's your gross profit margin. So that is the rule of thumb, that you charge 3 times the person's hourly rate when you bill them out. So even if you're flat feeing it, right? I hope that makes sense. So anyway, but when I look at all of this information, I immediately know when I'm reaching capacity. So if I know that my average styling assistant is able to, like in our business, our team members are all 3-day-a-week team members. So I know that when they're consistently booking 4 and 5 appointments a week, that we're going to be hitting capacity soon, and that we need to think about hiring a new team member. So that is super helpful. So it helps you understand when you hire. Now, if you're just in that growth phase, I hired an admin first because I wanted to take off some of the working on the business things and be able to delegate those out to somebody. Because training a new stylist would still need me for joining appointments and training. So that slows you down, right? And it's much easier to do that if I have an admin up and running. But this also tells me when I need to raise my prices, right? So like if you are going to give somebody a pay increase, for example, because they've been with you for a number of years, which we've done at our business, we have to increase our pricing to accommodate for that. So that's the other thing that it helps you do when you run these numbers. So I hope that all makes sense to you. So like in our business at the time of this recording, we charge $425 for a styling evaluation inside of our business. That is an up to 2-hour appointment, and that comes with the Selling Success Plan within 48 hours. So to give you kind of a benchmark for your business. And that is based on what I pay my team and 3Xing so that we are at 66% profit margin. Okay, so now let's see what it looks like for vacant staging. Like you legit, when you're running a vacant staging business, need to be even more strategic with your growth, because you're going to have, every time you grow your business, you're increasing your investment in your inventory, your infrastructure, and likely your team. So let me give you an example of what it looks like to add one more stage per week into your calendar. So if you have a 2-month contract and you're doing one additional stage per week, the questions to ask yourself are, do you have the capacity? Do you have the inventory? Do you have the funds available to build that inventory? And do you have the infrastructure to store that inventory? 4 very key questions. So let's take a look at the capacity. So on average, our team, from pull to pack to install to destage to restock, is 16 to 18 hours. So that is really helpful information. So pull, pack, load, install, and travel time for our team is, for a team of 2, 12 to 14 hours. So each team member is working 6 to 7 hours on that project, right? So that is really helpful information for me, because when I look at, it took us 7 hours total to deliver the project, right? And I multiply that by 2 team members at 14. Then I multiply that by the pay rate, right? So if you're paying them $20 an hour, like our example above, I'm multiplying 12 to 14 hours by 40, right? So that I can get my pricing based on that. So if you have a part-time team member, in terms of capacity, you're really looking at that person being able to handle 2 vacants per team member a week. And a full-time member could complete 3 per week at my hours. So that helps me understand, again, when I'm at capacity, when I'm getting to capacity, when I need to look at adding on team members. So for your business, you may be doing your pulling and packing and install a lot faster. So you are going to be able to have team members installing more projects per day, and you have a longer capacity runway than I would have. So that is the first thing you need to look at. So then let's look at the inventory and the funds for inventory. So in our example, we've got a 2-month contract. We're adding 1 stage per week. So your churn rate is 8 weeks. What do I mean by churn rate? That means it's 8 weeks before you get that inventory back. When you add that one stage per week, if you've got a 2-month contract, that suite of items for that house comes back to you in 8 weeks. So in order to add one stage per week, you will need 8 houses of inventory in order to cover those 8 weeks, right? Because it will take you 8 weeks to get the first set of furniture back. So you need to cover all of those extra stages for those 8 weeks. And I want you to think about, assume you spend approximately $5,000 on each house, right? So if you're adding up all your stuff, that's a $40,000 investment in inventory. And of course, you don't need to buy all 8 houses of inventory at one time. I'm just telling you that if your goal is to add that on, you're going to be looking at over time an additional $40,000 in investment to add one additional stage per week into your inventory if it costs you $5,000 to buy all the items for that house. So if your rental rate is 20% of the purchase price, that's $1,000 for just the rental item. So when you're factoring in what you're going to charge for somebody, you want to factor that in first before you factor in all the other stuff. And you'll need to rent those items out 5 times each before they break even. So that's 40 weeks of renting before you break even on your investment. So that's really important. And that's if you have steady work throughout the year. So the fastest you recoup your investment is 10 months. But if you're not steady, it could be up to 18 months before you've actually recouped all of that money. So that can be why we've got, significant debt going on inside of our staging businesses, because we have significant investment happening that we may not be able to recuperate as quickly as we need to. So that's why you may want to bump up your rental rate percentage if you can to even 30%, because if you are assuming $5,000 of rental, inventory per house at 30%, then you're looking at $1,500 for that rental versus $1,000, and that cuts your weeks back to 26 weeks before you recoup. So that's like 6 months versus 10 months. You could recoup that 4 months faster. That's not insignificant. So when you're plugging and chugging your numbers, when you've set the goal for one additional stage per week, that's the kind of thing I want you to go through, is how much you think you spend on average per house. And I'll give you an exercise to kind of think about that right now. So the first is, do you even know how many houses you currently have, right? So that's an important piece of information to know, because you may have 8 houses already and you don't even realize it. So if you think about the average 3,000 square foot house with a family room, dining room, kitchen, primary bedroom, and 3 bathrooms that you're staging. So that's not like a whole house, as I know a lot of people are moving to whole house. When you think about just those kind of key spaces in a standard sized house, you are looking at 1 sofa, 1 coffee table, 4 accent chairs, 4 accent tables or consoles, guesstimate, a dining table, 4 to 6 dining chairs. It would be 3 to 4 counter stools or 3 to 4 bar stools if there's an island, 3 to 4 area rugs throughout the house, 12 to 15 throw pillows, 1 bed, 1 set of bedding. And when I say 1 bed, it could be the Zenith, foldables. It could be an actual headboard. I'm just anything that turns your bed into a bed. 1 bedding set, 2 nightstands. You'll probably have 6 to 8 lamps, maybe even more. 2 to 3 shower curtains, 6 towels, approximately 40 pieces of accessories. If you're assuming, 3 to 4 pieces of accessories per coffee table, per dining table, per countertops, island, that kind of thing. Approximately 10 pieces of art and or mirrors, and probably 2 tall plants. So when you think about that, even if you don't carry the bigger items like the beds, the sofas, the dining tables, you're probably going to be stocking accent chairs, maybe not, but you'll definitely be stocking like dining chairs, stools, area rugs, all of that. That's a significant investment in a home there, and a significant investment in the space that you're going to need for those things. So again, that's 1 house. If you're adding an extra house per week, excuse me, and you have, that you're likely going to be adding on a factor of 8 houses of inventory, you multiply all of those by 8. It's a lot of extra space. So this is all what I talk about when I'm talking about strategic growth and strategic non-growth, is running those numbers and diving into this and using math and data to inform what you are doing when you go to make a decision. Now, at some point, I'm sure I will come up with a resource and a tool to help guide you through this. I just haven't done it yet. But when I have laid this out, I think this would be a really great tool for me to create. And most likely the first people to know that I've created that resource will be inside of the Staging Business School, because I want them to be able to look and make strategic decisions based on these numbers. So most likely it will get rolled out to the Staging Business School first when I make a tool like this. So anyway, just throwing that out there. But all of this is the way that we begin to make strategic decisions versus being responsive to what the market is sending to us. It's okay to tell people you are booked out. It doesn't feel good if you feel like you can handle taking on another project, but I want you to do it strategically and knowing what, if you do that, just understanding that, that how long of an investment, especially with your vacants, how long it will take you to recoup your investment on that, and just be prepared for it mentally. Because the last thing I want you to do is to take on new inventory, take on new debt associated with that, and then beat yourself up over it. But if you can look at it and go, okay, I took this on because it's new potential business for a realtor that could really explode my business, then yeah, like that is a great use of the credit you're borrowing, the loan you're borrowing, whatever it is. That's a great use of it, because then you will be turning that over. But if it's like something where it's a one-off, maybe it's a seller reaches out to you directly, I would potentially consider, are you ready to take that on? So these are decisions that you have to make for your business, but these are things that I think about in my business. And again, I think it's really important for you to collect the data for especially the time tracking, so that you know how much you should be charging. Because without that, like if you didn't know that it could potentially take, let's say worst case scenario, 20 hours to do a full staging project, then you're not going to bill accordingly. If you don't know how much on average you put in terms of the amount of inventory and what it costs into a staging, and you don't run the numbers, know what it is at 20 or 25 or 30% to rent that out, you're probably wildly undercharging for your services. And I just don't want that to happen when you start going out and marketing that you've got a broken model and a broken pricing system. So anyway, I don't know about you, but I feel like I just taught like a masterclass. I hope it felt that way. And I hope if you weren't able to sit and take notes, that you do come back and take notes. And again, we will put some links in the show notes to the Staging Business School. The Accelerate program is open enrollment right now. And at this time, you do have lifetime access when you join at the time of this recording, and get yourself on the growth wait list if you want to join inside of growth. Like, these are the kinds of problems we solve. This is the way we solve for them inside of the Staging Business School. So join us. All right, that is your sip for the week. I will look forward to seeing you the next time. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Staging Sips podcast. If you love what you've learned here today, please take a minute to rate and review it so more staging business owners can find us. And if you want to learn more about how to market and grow your staging business more strategically, I'd love to see you join us inside of the Rethink You Accelerate mentorship program. It is open enrollment. You can get more details at rethinkhomeinteriors.com/rethinkyou. Would love to see you inside.